Test J, Section 2, Question 25. During the 19th century, the French Academy of Art was a major financial sponsor of painting and sculpture in France. Okay, that's nice of them. Sponsorship by private individuals had decreased dramatically by this time. Okay, if you say so. Fun facts about how art was sponsored in the 19th century in France. Because the Academy discouraged innovation in the arts, there was little innovation in 19th century French sculpture. That sounds bad. Yet 19th century French painting showed a remarkable degree of innovation. I feel a paradox question here. I can almost always predict a paradox question. Let me just glance at the question stem real quick. Which one of the following, if true, most helps to explain the difference between the innovation in French painting and the innovation in French sculpture during the 19th century? Yep, it's a good sign that you're tuned in properly to logical reasoning if you're able to recognize, based on those facts, you go, oh, that's strange. Oh, I wonder if this is going to turn out to be a paradox question. Sure enough, it's a paradox question. I have understood the mystery. On a paradox question, that's definitely step one. What's the mystery? Well, you see, private individuals are dramatically funding art less. The French Academy of Art is a major financial sponsor of painting and sculpture. This academy discourages innovation in the arts, which, bad on them. They're supposed to be this Academy of Art, but they don't like innovation. All right. Good that you're funding art. Bad that you don't want innovation in art. That's lame, at least in my opinion. Why did it impact the innovation in sculpture a lot without impacting the innovation in painting? I don't know. My first thought is something like, well, maybe there was a Swiss Academy of Art. Maybe the Swiss Academy of Art was secretly funneling money to innovative French painters. Now, that's wildly speculative, and it's almost certainly not going to be the answer. I mean, it is not going to be the answer. The correct answer here is not going to randomly happen to say Switzerland. But it could, it totally could, if there was an answer that said, oh yeah, there was, in Basel, Switzerland, there was this Academy of Art, and they really loved innovation in painting, and they were like dumping money on French painters who were innovative, but not sculptors, then that would explain how this situation where private individuals in France aren't funding art anymore, the Academy of Art is funding art in these areas, painting and sculpture, they don't like innovation. The sculptors are like, yeah, okay, we're not going to innovate, but the painters keep innovating because they're getting their money from somewhere else. That could be across the border with Switzerland, or it could be in any other way. That would be one possible type of correct answer. Another good answer would be something like French painters loved being poor. How about that? French painters were like, nah, F you, Academy of Art. I'm going to just keep making whatever I want to make, and if you want to cut off my funding, good. Good. I like being poor. Some people do like being poor. Saints, mostly, like being poor. Maybe these painters were saints, and they don't care about the funding. Maybe the sculptors were like, no, I got to pay the bills, so I'm going to do what you want me to do. All right, I've got two different predictions. Those are different types of predictions. Notice that the question stem says which one, if true, most helps to explain. So unlike the top-down question we just did, where we're supposed to pick an answer that is justified by the facts on the page, this one's a bottom-up type of a question. Which one, if it's true, is going to change our understanding of the facts? It's going to explain this weird paradox. Okay, so as I go into the answer choices, I'm not going to dismiss an answer because I think it's false. I have to assume that the answer is true, and then the analysis becomes, well, does it satisfy this mystery about why French painters in the 19th century behave differently from French sculptors in the 19th century? Totally different type of analysis when I go through the answer choices. It's useful to be thinking about, is this a top-down question or is this a bottom-up question? I talked about that a lot in my office hours yesterday as well. A, in France in the 19th century, the French Academy gave more of its financial support to painting than it did to sculpture. That actually makes it harder to understand. For me, if the whole point here is the Academy is doing the funding, the Academy doesn't like innovation, why did the sculptors lack innovation and the painters still kept innovating? Saying, oh yeah, the Academy gave more money to the painters, that doesn't seem to make sense. Why were they giving them the money if they kept innovating? Why did the sculptors stop innovating if they weren't even getting the money? So I don't see how A explains anything. If anything, I think really A makes it harder to understand. B, the French Academy in the 19th century financially supported a greater number of sculptors than painters, but individual painters received more support on average than individual sculptors. That doesn't explain anything. If the individual painters were getting more than the individual sculptors, how does that explain why the painters kept innovating and the sculptors didn't? It's got to click, y'all. The correct answer is going to stand on its own without a lot of additional explanation. The correct answer is going to be like, oh yeah, well here, this makes it make sense. C, because stone was so much more expensive than paint and canvas, far more unsponsored paintings were produced than were unsponsored sculptures in France during the 19th century. That's going to turn out to be the correct answer, and I want to point out here that it's actually kind of similar to my second prediction. My second prediction was weird. My second prediction was, what if painters like being poor? Well, you know, C kind of says that. C's like, well, it's real expensive to get the material to do sculptures. You don't have a choice basically to be a sculptor without money. You need money to fund your sculpting. But painters don't care. Anybody can paint, you know, get some paint and get a wall and start painting. And because of that, if C is true, that you can do painting without the funding, well then yeah, the fact that all the funding was coming from some weird academy that doesn't like innovation, that might have less effect on painters who don't need money to paint than it would on sculptors who need money to sculpt. C is a perfect explanation. That's going to be the answer. D, very few of the artists in France in the 19th century who produced sculptures also produced paintings. I don't care about people who practice in both genres. How does that explain why one type of artist behaved differently from another type of artist? D's like, well, some people did both. Okay, great, that's nice, but that doesn't explain anything. E, although the Academy was the primary sponsor of sculpture and painting, the total amount of financial support that French sculptors and painters received from sponsors declined during the 19th century. That doesn't do anything. E says, oh, everybody was getting less money. Okay, what about it? Everybody's getting less money, therefore the painters kept innovating while the sculptors didn't? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't explain anything. I understood the mystery, which was a difference in behavior between painters and sculptors under certain circumstances. C, if true, is the one that makes it click. It's the one that explains why the two different types of artists behaved differently under these circumstances.